Okay, it's 1:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone again for attending Cutting Edge. And again, the same, after this class, you'll have a 10-minute break before the next class, which is the final class of the day, which will be energy codes with South Face. That's the last class, and everyone will have the opportunity to take that one. After this class is over, you will have that 10-minute break. If you have any questions during this class, Talking Trash with Kurt Anderson, just use the Q&A and we will monitor the question box. So you can ask them during the class, and we'll take time to go through and answer questions during the class today. We'd like to thank Kurt Anderson. He will be your instructor today, and he is going to be talking trash. Kurt is with Been There, Done That. So thanks, Kurt, and you go ahead and get started.
Hey, how's everybody doing today? I'm assuming good. So I'm Kurt. I'm going to be giving you a class today on Talkin Trash. We're going to concentrate mainly on solid waste, not so much on liquid waste. A couple things we're going to go over. We're going to start out with what is waste management? What are the types of waste? Talk about a little bit about landfills. Then we're going to go into the types of waste. The three main ones we're going to talk about are going to be MSW, agricultural and animal waste, C&D, that's your construction and debris. That's mainly what you guys deal with. Then we're going to talk a little bit about hazardous materials too. Then we're going to move on into the state of Georgia particularly, talk a little bit about what we got going on here, what we see in the future. Then we're going to talk about DeKalb County landfill, and then I'm going to give you guys some resources. We're going to try to make this about 50 minutes long. It's mainly a slideshow, y'all. So buckle up and fasten down for this fun one. All right, so let me get my screen cleaned up here so I can see. How do I get this thing to switch? All right. So every resident organization, industry, and human activity in the United States generates waste. I'd have to say this just isn't just exclusively to the United States. I'd say this is to everybody in the world. There's not one thing that we basically do that does not create any kind of waste. Anything from breathing to using the restroom. Buying something has created a tremendous amount of waste. That's generally where most of our waste comes from, is purchases of materials. The amount of waste produced is influenced by the economic activity, consumption, and population growth. Developed societies, such as the United States, generally produce large amounts of municipal solid waste, which is food, waste packaging goods, disposable goods, used electronics, and commercial industrial waste. This is your demolition debris, incendiary residues, refinery sludges. Among industrialized nations, the U.S. generates the most amount of municipal solid waste per person. All right. Although we only account for 4% of the world's population, we generate 12% of the municipal solid waste in the world. We are the largest producers of waste. And this really started after World War II. We became a throwaway society. Packaging, things are just expendable to us. Waste generation, in most cases, represents inefficient use of materials. Tracking trends in the quantity, composition, and effects of these materials provides insight into the efficiency which the nation uses and reuses materials and resources. This provides a means to better understanding the effects of waste on human health and ecological condition. So what is waste management? Basically what waste management is the activities and actions required to manage waste from its inception to its final disposal. This includes collection, transportation, treatment, and disposal of waste, together with monitoring and regulating the waste management process. Waste can be solid waste, solid, liquid, or gas. Each has a different method of disposal and management. Waste management deals with all types of waste, including industrial, biological, and household. In some cases, waste can pose a threat to human health. I think more often than not, it's going to lead to human health problems. Anywhere from disposal, actually from production to disposal, the amount of chemicals and waste that we produce. Most of the waste that we deal with is the municipal solid waste. That's the MSW. That's your household trash and your everyday throwaway things. So this is not a complete list of all the types of waste. The first three are the ones that we'll be talking about, which is going to be MSW. Next is going to be agricultural and animal waste. We'll talk about construction debris. This is mainly what the contractors are dealing with. There's also sewage, which we're not going to talk about. We're going to touch a little bit on sewage because that relates back to the animal waste. Biological waste and extracting, mining, oil, and gas waste. Those are the 6 biggest ones out there. Oh, let me make sure I didn't skip anything. All right, so where does this stuff go? So basically there's four places it can go. Mainly going to be landfills. We got a sub D landfills, which fall under the Resource Conservation Recovery Act, subtitle D. This focuses on state and local governments doing the primary planning, regulating, and implementing of the management of non-hazardous materials, such as household garbage and just regular trash. The next one, these types of landfills are your MSW, which can be a bioreactor, industrial, construction and debris, inert coal combustion. Subtitle C is mainly regulated by the federal government. And this is where this subtitle C, think government. They're the one that manages all this type of debris. They manage it from cradle to grave, from production to the end. The PCB landfills can fall into this because they're actually a subtitle because that's considered a hazardous waste. So they fall under the same regulations as subtitle C, but they're classified as a different type of landfill. Not all, well, we do have PCB landfills, but while not all PCBs require a decontamination process, some do. So that means some PCBs get just thrown in with regular trash. This is just mainly concentrates on the hazardous ones. The other thing we do with trash is using an incinerator that's creating the trash into energy, usually for electricity. And then the one that we always hear about a lot is recycling the trash. So right here's a little chart talking about municipal solid waste management from 1960 to 2007. This is telling you where the trash has been going. So if we look back in the 60s, most of it, I mean, right there, it looks like probably about 99% of it was going to landfills. So then as we creep up in time, looks like we had a changing point in about 1980s where we started doing a lot more recycling and looking into other ways to get rid of this trash. And from about 1990 on, the use of landfills, how many tons they've been accepting, has stayed about the same. But we became way more efficient with our recycling, composting, and combustion with energy recovery. So it's been a pretty much steady flow, not much change since the 1990s in the amount of trash that goes into a landfill. That's good news. Should be going up more than that. All right, this is going to give you guys a little breakdown of how many landfills we have currently in the United States. Red's going to represent open and green's going to represent closed. Now let me see if I can get this thing to play. It's just not playing. Oh, there we go. So now once you start hitting the 1950s, post-World War, it really starts expanding. And this goes up to 2013. All right, there's a 2013, that's every single landfill in the United States. Next, I'm gonna show you guys a quick video that Waste Management put together about landfills, a little bit how they're built, how we use the energy coming out of them, and what we do to protect everything. So let's see if this is gonna work like this. How do you play? All right. So next we're going to talk about animal waste and agricultural waste. Surprisingly, this is one of the biggest issues we have in the entire world, is what do we do with all this waste? It's by far the most that's produced. What's considered agricultural and animal waste is waste that comes from livestock, poultry, and dairy production. It can be manure from farms or the byproducts of meat processing. And it can also be the byproducts from inland farm, fish farm, agriculture. Animal waste can be used in farming as fertilizer for crops. That's just one of the many things that they try to do with it to manage it, is turn it into fertilizer, store it, and then spread it. So the latest numbers that I could find for the United States is that for 2012, livestock and poultry produced 369 million tons of manure. This is almost 13 times more waste than that of the entire US population. China accounts for approximately 30% of the total animal and agricultural waste in the world. And those numbers according to 2004, but they're suspecting now that the proportion has remained fairly consistent since then. Why is this such a big concern to us? Animal waste can contain organic matter, disease-causing organisms, and odors. It can also contain bacteria and nitrates, which can contaminate drinking water, cause illnesses, But what we commonly do with it, the animal waste, is we use it as a fertilizer for crops to feed back to the animals. But we don't always do this because a lot of it runs off through the fields, into the streams, gets down into the groundwater and into the drinking water. We can regulate our waste. Animals can't regulate theirs. That's the biggest problem. We have no way to really regulate their waste right now. So one of the biggest effects that we get from animal waste is greenhouse gas, which contributes to the greenhouse effect. Basically what that is, it's carbon dioxide and chlorofluorocarbons that get trapped in the atmosphere that don't let the heat reflection leave. It bounces it back onto the atmosphere and kind of insulates the earth, is the best way to explain it. The United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization estimates that livestock production is responsible for 14.5% of the global greenhouse gas emissions, while the World Watch Institute has estimated it could be as much as 51% of the global greenhouse. The most modest, what everybody says, that there's more animal waste, there's more greenhouse gases produced by animal waste than there is between cars, trucks, planes, and ships. One reason for this is that more than a third of the raw materials and fossil fuels consumed in the US are used in animal production. Specifically, livestock accounts for an estimate 9% of the global carbon dioxide emissions, 30 to 35% of the global methane emissions, and 65% of the nitrous oxide emissions. All right, so here's a map. This is talking about runoff from animal waste and disease. These are called zoonotic diseases. They're pathogens in animals which can contaminate food or water or enter the body directly through inhaling, skin lesions, and other routes that are vulnerable. Sorry. One of the ones that's the most popular is a leptospirosis, which is a bacteria usually spread to humans through the open wounds. People going into creeks, to rivers and streams, having an open wound and getting this bacteria into their system. Another big spreader of this disease is rat feces. Touching something that had rat feces on it, then touching your face or eyes, kind of similar to the coronavirus. The next one is Giardia, which is a small parasite that gets into your intestines. And this map here is showing the cases per 100,000 people. So if you look at the map, you're seeing the states with a lot of the agricultural work going on, which is very surprising for California to show such low numbers, because they're probably the largest producer of all agricultural products in the United States. Not a surprise to see New York State on there. They're the second largest producer of dairy in the country, probably in the world, really. So there's a lot that goes on there. Another one that's spread by animal feces that we're familiar with right now is a coronavirus. Is commonly found in bat guano, which I'm not going to get into politics or conspiracy theories, but the current one I doubt is coming from this resource. Next up, we're going to go into the most important one that we really need to talk about is MSW. This is your municipal solid waste. Most commonly known as trash, garbage, consists of everyday items we use then throw away. Like we said before, we are the largest producers per person in the world. What is this? This contains grass clippings, furniture, bottles, food scraps, newspapers, appliances, paints, and batteries. Everything that comes from our homes, schools, hospitals, and businesses. Now, the three main types of MSW waste are just the regular waste stuff that's got to go to a landfill. And we got e-waste is your electronic waste, and hazardous waste. E-waste is your electronics. We've seen a real big push in the past 10 to 15 years in the e-waste industry, just because technology is developing so much. We got to come up with a way to start reusing these products. I know a lot of cell phone companies now, when you buy a new cell phone, they'll actually give you a discount if you turn in your old cell phone, as long as it's in working condition. Great way to recycle. They're getting those products back. They're taking what they need out of them, taking out the precious metals and reusing them. Hazardous waste, solid waste, is regulated by the RCRA, which is the Resource Conservation Recovery Act. It is the public law that creates the framework for the proper management of hazardous and non-hazardous waste. Then the other half of that is what's called a super fund. What basically a super fund is uncontrolled hazardous waste sites. So this can be used for chemical spills, old landfills. We're going to get a little bit into this with the Georgia Superfund, which is kind of comical in a little bit. The total generation 2017 was approximately 267.8 million tons, which is equivalent to 4.51 tons per person per day that we generate. Approximately 67 million tons were recycled and 27 million tons composted. Together, more than 94 million tons of MSW were recycled and composted, a 35.2% recycling and composting rate. In addition, more than 34 million tons of MSW, 12.7%, were combusted with energy recovery, and more than 139 tons of MSW were landfilled. MSW increased from 4.48 pounds per person per day in 2015 to 4.51 pounds per person per day in 2017. So we had a good jump there in 2 years. The max, when it really peaked for us for the MSW generation was in 2020. After that, we kind of got it under control and started to slow it down. I mean, not 2020, 2000, sorry. What did I say? China and India make up for over 30% of the global population, but only generate 20% of the global municipal waste. Now, with these countries, they have a huge pollution problem. I mean, have you ever seen photos of China and India? They literally just have trash on the seawalls, just everywhere. It just gets thrown everywhere. It's not very well maintained. So those numbers could be a little bit skewed because they're not, all that trash is getting thrown on the streets and it's not getting accounted for. But as Americans, we produce, with these numbers, we produce 7 times more than the people of Ethiopia and the low-risk countries. Here's a chart that shows from 1960 to 2013, the amount of total MSW trash that was generated in the United States. That's that blue line right here. And down below, we're looking at the per person. So if we look back at 2000, we were at 4.74 pounds per person per day. So based on the current day numbers, Atlanta produces on a daily basis 26.9 million pounds of trash a day. That is a gigantic number. Total generation by material. This is what we're seeing the most of. Good news is a lot of these products that we're seeing, the high numbers, the paper, cardboard, yard trimmings, some plastics, not all plastic, metals and glass and wood. Just about everything on here is recyclable, with the exception of we can recycle some rubbers, not so much leather or textiles. We do recycle some textiles. Generally gets ground up and turned into another product or used as a base for a product. Go to the next slide. So this shows the amount of trash generated and where and what it was in the landfills. So right now we see a big increase in the food waste in the United States. Since the 1990s, that's been a big jump in what's going into landfills, along with plastic. Plastics have been a real big problem for the United States, I mean, for the world, really. But there's some good things that they found some bacteria and stuff that will break down plastics. Been hearing about them for years. But none of them ever seem to come to fruition and do the job properly. In 2017, we produced 267.8 million tons of trash, and out of that trash, 139.6 went to landfills. That's a huge amount. 59% of our trash ends up in landfills. So this is a breakdown of per person per day trash out of the 15 countries, the top 15 countries. If you go from the top to bottom, we produce more than 7.5 times than the India in trash. Canada, little brother, is not too far behind us in being wasteful, followed by Australia, Germany, South Africa, and France. This is in kilos. 1 kilo is equal to about 2¼ pounds, a little bit less than that. I think we just had this slide too. It must be a double. I'm sorry, y'all. Recycling, this one we hear most about, and what people push the most: recycling, reusing, and reduce, the 3 R's. The total MSW recycled, these are 2017 numbers, I'm sorry, was 67.2 million tons, with paper and cardboard accounting for approximately 60% of that amount. Metals, metals comprised about 12%, while glass, plastic, and wood made up between 4 and 5%. Composting, which is, we've seen another big push in that, particularly with food waste, because that can be reused back into fertilizers, gardening, soils, amendments, and things like that. The total MSW compost is 27 million tons. This included approximately 24.4 million tons of yard trimmings. Yard trimmings, that's your trees, branches, logs, trees being cut down, whatever's coming out of your yard. And that has increased more than a 5-fold since 1990. And 2.6 million tons of food waste. One of the biggest things that happened in the recycling industry here in the United States happened in 2018, and it was when it went into effect. 2017, China stopped taking all of our imports of solid waste. Mainly these being, our papers, plastics, the stuff that we don't want. China was literally taking our crap from us. But back in, they passed a law in 2017 that went into effect in January 2018. So now basically what's happening with all that stuff that used to go there, the recyclables, they're not getting recycled anymore. The joke's on all of us. We're making the attempt to recycle. Then the companies that are handling recycling don't have a way to process it, and it's not profitable enough for them. So they're literally just driving it right to the landfill and getting rid of it. So one of the best things that we can do is to minimize the amount of waste that we use. And what to do with this waste, the best way to do is just minimize what we have. From the least to the most relevant on how we want to handle our waste is, the least favor being just throwing it in the trash, getting rid of it. Next would be using it for energy. That's going to incinerators, turning it into something that we can use, electricity, whatever it might be. Next are the 3 R's. Recycle, that's taking that, putting that tin can in the recycle bin, it gets melted down and becomes a tin can again. Reusing things, water bottles, instead of buying the individual bottles of water, buying 1 bottle of water and just filling it with filtered water, whatever water you like to drink. And then the most important thing to do to minimize this is just to reduce what we use. This means cutting back on packaging, reducing boxing. Amazon, for example, they need to learn this practice with their boxing that they send all these packages in. I live in a box hell at my house because of these guys. I can't take it. I wish they would come up with a way to start accepting it back. The 2 main types of recycling are opened and closed. The closed is the example that I just gave you a second ago of that pop can being sent back to get turned into a pop can again. And an example of an open type of recycling is a plastic bottle being recycled into a ballpoint pen or into a jacket or into a shirt. What you're seeing now is a lot of these companies are actually using these plastic bottles to make their shirts, pants, whatever it is. And they're actually using that part as their marketing program to get people to buy their products. This is a total MSW recycling and compost by material. This is 2017 numbers. Here, I mean, this is the obvious, the paper plastics. I mean, the paper and cardboard is going to be our biggest. Yard trimmings, this is probably our easiest to recycle out of everything. There's actually real big money in cardboard recycling. There's money to be made in that. There's big plants around Atlanta that'll pay you some good money per pound to take that stuff. I guess we got a question here. Let me take a look here. Okay, so Chris asked a question on the recycling. On the recycling topic, why do you think they do not use refillable glass bottles? Wait, I'm sorry. Why do you think they do not use refillable glass bottles here like they do in Europe? Not sure if it's a question or you have knowledge or not. I really don't know that. I think it's probably because we don't do a lot of glass anymore. It probably has to do with production costs. A lot of the stuff we get is plastic now. I do a lot of reusing of plastic bottles. You know, even just if I buy them at a store, that's what I refill back up. So this is this chart you're looking at here is what's being recycled. The biggest changes that we see in are the paper and the yard trimmings. Paper had a huge increase in about 2000. So we're seeing from the 1990s to 2000, there's a large change in how we produce stuff. I mean, how we start disposing of our waste, particularly in the recycling, reusing, and reducing area, as you can tell by this chart. Next, we're going to talk about contractor waste. This is your C&D, construction and demolition debris. Oh, I'm sorry, is that showing up on you guys? These are materials resulting in the alteration, construction, and deconstruction, rehabilitation, and repair of any man-made physical structure, including houses, buildings, industrial or commercial facilities, and roadways. This includes building materials as insulation, nails, wiring, shingles, and roofing, as well as waste originating from the site being prepared, such as dredging materials, tree stumps, rubble. Construction waste may contain lead, asbestos, and other hazardous substances. We're going to talk about some of that stuff here in a second. Here are some of the most common things that we see in C&D materials: concrete, wood, asphalt, gypsum, drywall, metals, bricks, glass, plastics, salvageable building components, doors, windows, plumbing fixtures, trees, stumps, earth, rocks, and clearing sites. A lot of this stuff on this list, the good news, it's recyclable and highly sought after. Concrete, recyclable, as long as it doesn't have the rebar in it, it can be recycled very easy. Wood can be recycled very easy, used for mulch, paper, bunch of other products. Asphalt, if you can get yourself on some ground up asphalt, you're a lucky person, because that stuff is very, very, very valuable. Because it's pretty easy product to recycle. All they got to do is heat it up and it turns back to its original form just about. One of the biggest things we used to have here in Metro Atlanta, this is back in like 2012 is about when we started. At that time, we had probably 4 or 5 facilities that used to recycle roofing shingles. How this worked was, you know, the contractor would fill it with the shingles, no other debris could go with it. It'd go to a plant. The people at the plant would take out like the metal stuff and what's the word I'm looking for, in the pallets that are common and the wood chunks. Then what would happen is they're actually charging to take this stuff in, and then these paving companies from Alabama were coming over to get the stuff, because there in Alabama, roofing shingles can be used in roadways. in Georgia, they cannot be used in a road. They can be used for parking lots, and that's really about it. Parking lots and personal driveways, but not on roads. And that's where most of the asphalt goes, is the roadway. So it's not an industry here that's being used yet, just based on the fact that they won't put it in the roads. If they put it in the roads, we'd probably have a good roofing shingle recycling industry here. Still a couple places around that do it. There's really only two in the metro Atlanta area, one on the south side and one on the northeast side. Gypsum, this is used a lot as a fertilizer and used with fertilizers, I should say, in lawn care. What they do is they go in, they take the paper backing off of it, they ground down the gypsum and mix it up. Metals, we all know about metals being recycled. Bricks are just as good as concrete when it comes to recycling. They can be ground up and be reused even in the concrete mixes. Glass, plastics, we all know about those. Salvageable building products, doors, windows, and plumbing fixtures. We'll talk a little bit more about them, what we can do with them. And the tree, stumps, earth. In 2017, C&D debris, concrete was the largest proportion of C&D debris. It accounted for 69.7% of all C&D, followed by asphalt at 15%. And wood makes up approximately 7%. Then the rest is all the other stuff. In the United States in 2017, we generated 569 million tons of C&D, which is more than twice the amount of the MSW that we produce. C&D is a little bit different. The good news about C&D is it doesn't have as much leaching problems as the municipal waste. It's a lot less regulated. There's quite a few C&D landfills in the metro Atlanta area, as where there is virtually no MSW landfills in metro Atlanta. I think there's actually only one that falls. No, there is only one that falls within the metro Atlanta area. Demolition represents more than 90% of the total C&D debris generated, while construction represents less than 10%. So this is the tear out for the remodel. This is a tear down of the house, is what's creating all the waste. All right, benefits of reducing. I mean, this is all pretty much common sense. Couple things to hit on here is that by reducing it, we can create employment, economic activities, and recycling industries and provide increased business opportunities within the local community. In 2007, it was estimated that 230 jobs were created around recycling C&D materials. I know here in Atlanta, we got several facilities that will recycle concrete. And that creates a bunch of jobs, really. Reduce overall project expenses, avoiding purchases, disposal costs, and donation of recovered materials to qualified 501c3 charities, which provides a tax break, and on-site reuse also reduces transportation costs. It will lead to fewer disposal facilities, potentially reducing the associated environmental issues, can offset the environmental impact associated with the extraction and consumption of virgin resources and production of raw materials. And it will conserve landfill space for the future. One of the things that they did here in Douglasville, is where I'm located. The city, well, the county owns a landfill. They used to have an MSW landfill there, but when the regulations started getting pushed, like most counties, they had to get out of it. So they kept the C&D. But what they did was they made it so expensive to dispose there at their C&D landfill so that no one uses it. Doesn't make much sense to me, but that's their way of conserving their land space. Here's not 3 R's, but 4 R's to consider to divert the C&D materials by practicing source reduction, salvaging, recycling, and reusing existing materials, buying and using recycled materials and products. And Examples of C&D source reduction measures include preserving existing buildings rather than constructing new ones, optimizing the size of new buildings through design, and prolonging the useful lives of buildings. In addition to changing design of buildings, building systems, materials, C&D source agreements prevent excess materials packaging from arriving to the construction site. One of the main things we can do is deconstruct for reuse. That means taking stuff apart that can be donated. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a second, about an organization around here that does that in Atlanta, uses it, resells it. So what we're going to talk about next is a couple of the common hazards that we run into in the waste industry that contractors, homeowners that generally like to get rid of, but are a pain for us to touch, or we just can't touch at all. The first one, everyone's favorite, asbestos is the bestest. So this is one of the most regulated type of debris that we have in the country. Although it's not totally banned in the United States, we can still buy materials in it. It is regulated for disposal. This is the following excerpt from the Georgia Rules for Solid Waste Management, which falls under the EPD. Let's skip ahead. Asbestos containing waste means any solid waste containing more than 1% by weight of naturally occurring mineral silicates. I'm not going to go into these big words. Commercially used fibers, specifically in asbestos form varieties. These words right here are the actual types of asbestos, all of them there. What we do use them for still is we see them in brakes, pads. One of the biggest areas we're going to see a lot of asbestos coming from is out of drywall. I don't know if y'all remember back during Hurricane Katrina, during the rebuild, there was a huge shortage on drywall. So what do? We reached out to little brother up north and said, hey guys, we need some drywall. But here's the deal with Canada. Canada, at that point in time, had very little regulations on asbestos. As a matter of fact, they didn't stop producing asbestos in 2011. So we imported all this drywall all over the country that contains asbestos, which is going to run into problems now when we start taking it down. You know, people are going to be exposed to this stuff directly during the cutting and demolition of it. They're not going to know that it was there. Canada actually had a city that was called Asbestos, Quebec. Currently, they're changing their name because they don't like that name anymore. But at one time, it was everybody wanted that mineral and everything that they had. So the city there is they're trying to change their name. Canada recently put in some laws to stop the ban and use of asbestos, but there's still some things that it can be used in. Same as here in the United States. One of the biggest things that's used in the United States here is in roofing, mainly in wall flashings on commercial roofs. Next one is paint that I'd like to talk about, or any hazardous waste, I guess. Paint is a very hard item to get rid of. It's very regulated at any landfill. You get caught with it. If we get caught with it, they can sometimes they'll just say, hey, just take your whole load and get out of here. They'll literally scoop it back up, throw it in a dumpster, and kick your butt out and send you somewhere else. There's a couple resources here in Atlanta. We got a company called Atlanta Paint Disposal. Great organization. They literally take in your old paint, they mix it up, they sell it. They do, I don't know exactly what they do with it. Cobb County's got a paint recycling at their transfer station. They take the paint, they sort it into colors, strain it, and then they sell it. Well, they don't sell it, they give it away, they donate it to organizations that are in need of painting. They kind of set color tones by what they have. So as most hazardous waste, they require a little bit extra care. One of the easiest ways to get rid of paint is get yourself a 5-gallon bucket and a bag of concrete. Mix it up into that concrete, let it settle. There you go. Now you got waste that. Now you got paint that you can get rid of. Paint is acceptable as long as it's dried. So, you know, it can be dumped on a carpet to dry out. Just let it dry, roll it up, and get rid of it that way. Cardboard. Some people use kitty litter. You can also go to the hardware stores and buy little packets, what they call paint dry. There's a couple tablespoons of some substance in there, but it only treats a half a gallon on that. You can buy a bag of concrete for probably about $10, and you can treat a lot of concrete. Lead-based paint. This is a big problem for houses. Basically, I think it's before the 1980s. A lot of lead-based paint in there. I'm assuming you contractors are familiar with this. There is no real regulation of disposing this. The only regulation that really comes is in the removal. But other than that, I mean, that stuff can just go right in the trash. I guess they consider it, you know, an encapsulated material once it's dried. Now, here's the biggest problem we have. Tires. Tires, tires, tires. What do we do with all the tires? In 1994, tires were banned federally from going to any landfill. They must go to a state licensed facility or hauler. So technically, in order to haul a bunch of tires, you have to have a special permit that's issued by the state. We do pay a fee on every tire that we purchase. We pay a fee that's supposed to go towards tire cleanup. This illegal tire dumping is a huge problem, particularly here in Metro Atlanta. A couple of years ago, there's a old apartment complex down on the south side of 20, I guess it's considered the West End, that an elderly lady had owned. And people were coming in and just dumping tires, just dumping all these tires. And she was in her late 90s. So the state finally stepped in and said, hey, listen, you've got to clean all this up. And the cleanup cost was going to be like close to $1 million. So this poor lady, 98 years old, is getting told she's got to spend about $1 million to clean up all these tires. She basically told the state to take a hike. She'll be dead in a couple of years, and good luck. But this is the main reason why you see them all over the sides of the roads, throwing places, people trying to turn them into flower pots or whatever. But tires can be recycled fairly easy, and they can be produced into a lot of stuff. They can use them in roads, roofing shingles, tracks, walking surfaces, so much that it can be recycled into. So people gotta realize that this stuff can be reused instead of throwing it away. In my opinion, what the state should do is put a tax on there that says, hey, when you're done with this tire, we've already charged you for it. So you can bring it to any tire disposal place and get rid of it for free. And then they just charge and they pay back to the receivers of the used tires. All right, so when the state disposal fees Georgia pays when they buy new tires and county pays if they operate landfills will go down in July of this year. But the environmental cleanup programs, those levies funds, see more money in the next year. The governor proposal for the coming year, all the money raised by the new lower fees will go into hazardous waste and solid waste trust funds. So this is what I was talking about here a little bit earlier, the super fund. This is basically our super fund. Money raised in new lower fees will go into the hazard waste and solid waste trust funds, Georgia super fund. Unlike past years, none of it would be diverted. Lawmakers created the funds almost 30 years ago to clean up tire dumps, landfills, and hazardous waste sites. But they've turned tens of millions of dollars raised by the fees for other purposes other than what it's dedicated for. Under House Bill 220, which passed the final day of 2019 session, the $1 fee we pay on all tires purchased will be dropped down to 38 cents on July 1st of 2020. The solid waste disposal fee will be reduced from 75 cents per ton to 50 cents per ton. By doing this, they're projecting they're going to get another $11 million in revenue. I don't know how they do that, considering they reduced all the numbers. Let me see what's I got to pick up the pace here a little bit for everybody. All right, we're just going to move on. We still got a couple more sides to go. Mattresses, these are another big problem. This is why we always see them on the side of the road with the tires. They can't go into landfills. Landfills won't take them. They destroy equipment and chew up stuff. I'm gonna start cruising pretty fast now so we can get out of here. Appliances. Long story short on these, most appliances are easily to dispose of. The big ones that you can't are anything that contains a refrigerant. So that's your refrigerators, freezers, dehumidifiers. But the joke's on us. Basically, everything, all refrigerators created after 1995 do not contain hazardous materials, and all AC units created after 2007 don't. But we are still required to follow regulations for disposing of them. It's a moneymaker. Georgia's Waste. We'll go over this real quick. Georgia's Waste is managed by the EPD. The three departments of the EPD are the air, land, and watershed. Land is the one that manages the disposal and treatment of solid waste throughout the state. Landfills in the state of Georgia, according to 2018 numbers, I can tell you right now these numbers are wrong. We have a total of 108 landfills. About half of them are considered C&D, which includes industrial and inert. I know there's way more than one inert landfill in the state. There's only one industrial landfill, and that's a failed carpet landfill up there in the Dalton area. MSW, what we heard about earlier, the clay line and line landfills, we've got 7 that are not lined at all. So these are landfills that are dating pre-1990. They got a miscellaneous of 21 landfills. So in Georgia, we have one of the best landfills actually probably in the country, and one of the biggest surprises is that it comes out of DeKalb County. Can't seem to get anything else right. It consists of just over 1,200 acres, and 877 are permitted for landfill use. They've got everything from composting, recycling. One of the coolest things they do there is they literally take what they call landfill gas, and they transform it into RNG, which is considered renewable gas. So you saw earlier with the pipes that went underneath that remove the liquids, go that way. They put these pipes in that come up, they grab all the landfill gases, then they convert it into gas that can be used in vehicles. DeKalb County actually runs all their solid waste vehicles from trash pickup to I don't know what you even call them, individual vehicles, all run off recycled natural gas. So this is a breakdown of the process, how it works. They grab the gases, they bring in, they process it, they remove the byproducts that aren't good, and then they distribute it. They literally, the byproducts that aren't good, they burn off, and the other stuff that they pump out to gas stations and to food processing places. You can go to DeKalb County landfill, or you can go up to their main office there. If you have a compressed natural gas vehicle, you can pull in and buy gas from them directly at a pay at the pump. Here's their actual facility where they do all this work at. There's their flare where they do all their burn off. This is the machine that turns all this into gas that can be used for vehicles. That's actually one of their fill stations that they have for public use. So what they do with the gas landfill, if they can't use it, it gets treated to treat fresh water through a digester. A digester is basically something that's it's a heating process to break down stuff. A couple local resources that you guys have. One of the, for your local MSW stuff is your Keep Georgia Beautiful. All these areas represent all the green areas, and I don't know what you even call that color there, are areas that currently have, like Keep Paulding Beautiful, Keep Cobb County Beautiful, whatever it is. Last year, Keep Georgia Beautiful collected 2 million pounds of litter and debris. 69 million pounds of litter and debris were recycled, and they cleaned up over 30,000 acres. All right, I see we got another question here. I don't think you have to purchase it. I think they give you Chris's question was, can you purchase the compost from this landfill? You don't have to pay for it. I believe you can go there and get it free from Seminole. You just have to prove that you're a business or you reside within DeKalb County. If you don't have a driver's license or you don't have a business license, you ain't going to get it. But I think they also distribute it at a couple other places too. So we got Keep Georgia Beautiful. Another great resource is the Georgia EPD Land Protection. If you guys want to know where landfill is, they literally every year they publish a report of every landfill in the state, what they handle, how many more years are projected to be around. So they got a great resources on landfills. Life Building Center, this is a great NARI partner here. LBC emerged out of the desire to empower communities to become more resilient by making the way we create, use, and remove buildings more sustainable. One of the neatest things that these people have that's great for contractors, particularly in the remodeling industry, they actually have a deconstruction services program where they literally will send someone out to remove the cabinetry, the windows, the doors, the flooring, whatever it might be that they can reuse or resell for someone else to use instead of it going to the landfill. Great place. Earth 911. This is a great resource to find places to recycle. Earth911.com. South Face Institute, I'm sure y'all are familiar with this, a great Atlanta-based institute. Their main, I guess what you call it, environmental friendly houses is called Earthcraft. Green building program, I'm sorry. A couple of the green building programs we have currently in the country on the residential end, we got Earthcraft. Enterprise Green Communities, LEED, National Green Building Standards, Qualified Action Plan, HUD Green, MIP reduction. Commercial, we got the BIT building, the DOD, and the HPSB, High Performance Sustainability Building, Earthcraft, Energy Star, Fitwell, LEED, and Living Building Challenges. In the commercial industry, LEED's the kind of the biggest one. I'm assuming probably in residential, it's Earthcraft. And that's it, y'all. Looks like we did it in 56 minutes. Anybody got any questions, comments, concerns, bad reviews?
That was awesome. I learned a lot. This is Tanya. So, yeah, does anyone have any last minute questions that you need Kurt to answer? That was really good information, though, especially on the local, for the landfills and how everything's processed. So that's good. It's good to know for especially.
Yeah, I really wanted to get into that a little bit more, but I guess I went a little bit over on time.
That's it. Yeah. Well, we'll have this obviously recorded and posted, and then any of this information, if you guys want either contact information or Kurt's contact or some of the places he suggested, we can post that as well, or get that emailed out to you after the classes. So all this information will be available to you guys. I'm not seeing any questions pop up, but there will be another 10-minute break in between classes, and your next one is scheduled to start at 2:40, and that will be the energy codes with Southface. You just mentioned Southface, so they're actually teaching our last class of the day for energy codes, and that'll be a class that everyone would be taking. It's our last class of the day, so hopefully all you guys are able to take that as well with Southface. We want to thank Kurt a whole lot. You did a great job. Thank you so much for participating. And Kurt is with Been There, Done That. But yeah.
Sounds good, y'all. You guys have a good meeting in the next couple minutes. You have a good one, and thanks everyone for attending.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.